Test J, Section 3, Question 18, editorialist. In all cultures, it is almost universally accepted that one has a moral duty to prevent members of one's family from being harmed. Okay, sure, you got to help your family members out and try to protect them from bullies at school or whatever. That makes sense. They're your family. Thus, few would deny that if a person is known by the person's parents to be falsely accused of a crime, it would be morally right for the parents to hide the accused from the police. Wait, hold up. Okay. So there are several things going on here, and I want to talk about each one in turn. The first is the word thus. Okay. The word thus is introducing a conclusion. I don't know if it's the main conclusion, but it is introducing a conclusion, and it's doing two things. It's telling me that I'm about to read a conclusion, and it's also telling me that I just read evidence for that conclusion. You guys cool with that? Now, the standard on the LSAT for conclusions is what? Does anyone know? In other words, when the LSAT draws a conclusion, what is the standard that we need to hold that conclusion to? How do we decide whether that conclusion is good or bad? Catherine, go for it.
Like, if all of the evidence and the premises are valid before, then the conclusion is valid. But like usually when they give us a conclusion, we have to question it.
We usually do have to question it. The standard in my mind is, and I think this is what you're getting at, it's that if you accept the premises as true, which we have to do, so we're going to go ahead and accept that it's almost universally accepted, that almost everyone agrees you need to protect your family members. If we accept that as true, does it necessarily follow? So the question is what they're about to say, is what they're about to conclude something that must follow from that claim, right? And here it's like, okay, I will grant you that everyone, or not everyone, almost everyone accepts the idea that you should protect your family members. But does that mean you should hide them from the cops? Some people might be like, yeah, you should protect your family. And I realize that your son or daughter, for some reason, I'm wrongly thinking of that guy, Brian. I'm sorry to bring that up, but he was actually, right, not falsely accused, maybe actually accused, but whatever. If your kid was falsely accused of a crime, you know that, hey, my kid did not commit this crime. Does that mean it's morally right for you to hide them from the police? No, you might be like, yeah, okay, you guys are wrong, but here he is, and we're going to figure this out. Hiding them just seems to make things worse, right? Anyways, so it's not even clear that you're protecting your son or daughter or anyone else in your family by hiding them, but whatever. Oh, and then, okay, so that's my qualm with these first two sentences, is that the second sentence is saying, what I'm about to tell you must be true given what I just told you. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't think that's necessarily true. Even if everybody agrees that you should protect your family, they may not turn around and agree that you should hide them from the cops. Then the next sentence says hence. So what that means is that what I just read was an intermediate conclusion, right? It wasn't the main conclusion of this argument. The author is going further. And so now it's like, okay, what else do you have to say? Hence, it is also likely to be widely accepted that it is sometimes morally right to obstruct the police in their work. All right. If you accept the second sentence, that a lot of people think it's okay to hide your kids from the cops when they're falsely accused, or whoever in your family, then it does seem like that a lot of people would end up agreeing that it's sometimes, not usually, but sometimes morally right to get in the way of the police and their work. But I still don't think that the second sentence follows from the first. It doesn't necessarily have to be true. And it's not even necessarily true that people would agree with the last sentence. They might not think, I don't know, they might agree that it's okay to hide your kid from the police, but they don't think that that's obstructing justice or obstructing the police. It seems like it is, but people are illogical. So just because one belief is widely held doesn't mean that another similar belief or logical belief is also widely held. People are sadly illogical. Okay, so anyways, major problems with this argument. The reasoning in the editorialist argument is most vulnerable to criticism on the grounds that this argument, okay, so it's asking for us to describe a flaw in the argument. A, does this argument utilize a single type of example for the purpose of justifying a broad generalization? No, well, okay. On some weird way, this is describing the relationship between the second sentence and the last sentence, but I wouldn't say that that's a problem. I don't feel like there was a huge problem going from the second sentence to the last sentence. And I'm not even sure that the last sentence is a broad generalization. It is more general than the second sentence. The second sentence was a specific example of hiding people from the police. And the last sentence is a little bit more broad. It's just about obstructing the police as opposed to specifically hiding someone from the police. But again, this is not my biggest concern with this argument. So if it is at all, so I don't think this is the answer. B, fails to consider the possibility that other moral principles would be widely recognized as overriding any obligation to protect a family member from harm. Yeah. I don't know what those principles would be, but you don't even if your kid has been falsely accused, you don't turn around and then start engaging in this, subversive behavior of hiding them from the cops. That just, some people might say, well, I'm not going to go that far. So although they agree with the first sentence, they don't agree with the second. I would definitely keep that answer open. C, presumes without providing justification that allowing the police to arrest an innocent person assists rather than obstructs justice. Okay, maybe this is an assumption that's going on in the last sentence, but I don't feel like this is the big problem in this argument. It's not really going from the third sentence or the second sentence to the third that was the huge jump. The huge jump took place going from the first sentence to the second sentence. D, takes for granted that there is no moral obligation to obey the law. No, this argument is not about what is or is not moral. It's actually just about what people would think or agree or accept as moral. Okay, E, takes for granted that the parents mentioned in the example are not mistaken about their child's innocence. Okay, it does seem to take that for granted. It does seem to actually think that was this about parents? It was about parents. I kept thinking that it wasn't, but it actually was. Okay, that the parents were right. It does act like that is in fact true and that there's no problem that they could be confused. But again, I don't think that's the issue here. The issue isn't about these small details. It's about how we got to the second sentence and its point that we'd be okay with hiding kids from the cops. Okay, so B is by far the biggest problem and thus the correct answer. And yeah, that's it. Questions? Okay, that was a level 4 question. How'd you guys feel about it? It's challenging. Okay, I'm happy to go. Adam, go for it. You have a question.
Hi, Ben. I just want to talk a little bit more in depth about question A. I was pretty surprised when I got it wrong.
Yeah.
So I was looking at the explanation in the demon,
Yep.
and it was talking about how sometimes it's kind of the big issue with that, with why it throws it off, because sometimes literally means one or more. So with question A, so why I was attracted to it, because I was thinking of this generalization. I was thinking, well, you can't justify that. This is only one example of that. How is that such a generalization? How could you draw that generalization? But because they throw in sometimes, am I gathering because they throw in sometimes, it's not a broad generalization then? That's a justified generalization?
Oh, well, okay. I don't know if it's, yeah.
Because I still think when I read it, I'm like, well, justifying this, like obstructing the police and the work, that's a pretty damn big generalization to make.
Well,
But I guess the sometimes. makes it a little bit more technical.
Well, sometimes just means, not necessarily even most of the time. It could just be once every now and then. If you agree with the second sentence that it's okay to hide your kids from the cops, then you would probably be likely to agree that it's sometimes, not maybe not even that many times, but at least on some occasions, it's morally right to obstruct the police in their work. So I don't really feel like there's a problem going from this example to this generalization, whether that means it's broad or not broad. I don't know. Maybe it's not very broad because it just says sometimes. The issue is that if you can show one case in which it's okay, then you would have to agree that it's okay sometimes.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah. That's just frustrating, but yeah.
Good. Okay. Anyways, any other questions? Alrighty. Let's go ahead